important things that I'm going to be talking about, the issues about the Southern Cameroon, as you all may have listened to the content of the message. It's clear. It's very clear. It's very clear. But I want to thank all of you that are tuning in to, I know many of you across the globe, thanks the United States, thanks those around the world that have been support of the people of Southern Cameroon. It is very, very important that we talk about the issues that is pertinent to the people of Southern Cameroon. Give me 1 minute, I'll be right back. So, the one thing that is very, very pertinent, I want to thank all of you that are listening, and I'm going to break some of the key points down, you know, you know, yeah, sometimes people wonder why is it that there is always an issues in Africa. The problems has to do with the colonial masters in Africa, and that is why the Africans are suffering because of the policy that is implemented in Africa, and that is affecting many all of us. And so, the issues that I want to talk about is about Southern Cameroon, the breach of duty, the breach of duty. Um, you know, the breach of duty and the failure of the British part, lack of loyalty. The people of Southern Cameroon has always been very loyal to the British government. Prior to the 19, remember that the British had colony in Africa. And so those colonies in Africa uh, has been living with Britain for a quite length of time, and all together with other colonies in Africa. But however, besides the Britain, France also have other colonies in Africa. So, so we're going to talk about these issues, more in depthly. Let's look at where things went wrong. Article 1516 XV, Article 1516 XV is the United Nations Charter article. So before we talk about these articles, let's look at why did we came into these issues. So you all learned about the Second World War. Prior to the Second World War, there was also issues of the First World War. So when the Germans were occupying certain areas in Africa, and during the Second World War, the Germans were defeated during the Second World War. That ended the 1945 treaty. So territories that were under the German rule were being aligned that the Allied forces should take control of those territories. So Cameroon was part of those territories. So certain area under the British administrative authority and other were under the French administrative authorities. So the British government has been the British government has been administering its own authority. So they practiced the common law system, and those system of government was contrary to the French system. So it came a point that the United Nations state that the United Nations Article 1514, the United Nations Article 1514, XV, state that all the colonial territory be given an independence. Article 1514 of the United Nations Charter, that all the colonial territory be given an independence. So that article of the United Nations Charter was respected. And so France respect that charter of the United Nations, Article 1516, Article 1514, XV, that all the territory that were under the colonial be given a prior independence. So France respect that article and prepare La Republique du Cameroun for that respect of Article 1514 of the United Nations Charter. So in 1st of January, La Republique was recognized as a sovereign nation, which take effect of January 1st, 1960, which should have been the rightful independence that La Republique should have been celebrated to recognize their sovereignty. So Britain, on her part, carried on similar process to respect the Article 1514 XV of the United Nations Charter. That article in which was voted at the United Nations and to become an effect. So Southern Cameroon was voted on the 21st of April 1961, and the effective day was October 1. That is why the people of Southern Cameroon are celebrating to recognize their independence. With respect to the Southern Cameroon and La Republique, some people said there was never a treaty, there was never an agreement, there was never a document justify that the people of Southern Cameroon should live together with La Republique du Cameroun. There is no document. There is no document that the people of Southern Cameroon should live together as one, as they claim. Remember that in 1961, on the 21st of April 1961, when the vote that took place at the United Nations in 1961, the vote, La Republique du Cameroun voted against the bill. That's what they call Article 1608 XV. Article 1608 XV was voted at the United Nations overwhelmingly. 64 nations, including United States, voted at the United Nations headquarters in New York on the 21st of April 1961, and it was overwhelmingly voted to recognize the people of Southern Cameroon as a sovereign nation. La Republique voted against the bill. La Republique voted against Article 1608 XV, and despite they voted against, if they voted against and 64 nations voted to recognize the people of Southern Cameroon as a sovereign nation, therefore La Republique has no legal authority to control or colonize the people of Southern Cameroon. So Southern Cameroon, on the 17th, in which some leaders of the Southern Cameroon declare an independence. Yes, they have the right to declare their independence because Article 1608 of XV of 21st of April 1961, Southern Cameroon has its own government, House of Assembly, and the Prime Minister. Southern Cameroon has its own House of Assembly and a Prime Minister and a government. So Southern Cameroon is a nation with an active government in place. First with Endele, second with Jongo Foncha, and third with Jua. Jua government was overthrown. Jua government of Southern Cameroon was overthrown by La Republique, in violation of Article 1608 of the United Nations Charter. La Republique has no legal authority over the people of Southern Cameroon. If Southern Cameroon is a sovereign nation that had their independence, that was voted, in which La Republique voted against. If La Republique voted against, what was its policy to vote against? So if they vote against the Southern Cameroon, why do they believe that they should have a government to control over the people of Southern Cameroon? Southern Cameroon has a status government, a parliament, a prime minister, and the House of Chiefs. Those were the active government in place in Southern Cameroon. And those active government is in line with the United Nations Article 1540 XV of the United Nations Charter, that all the colonial territory be given a prior independence. So how did the British government breach of trust? The British government on September 30th, 1961. Remember that on the 21st of April, the United Nations voted overwhelmingly to recognize the people of Southern Cameroon as a sovereign nation. That is Article 1608 of the United Nations in 1961, 21st of April 1961 at 3 p.m. here in the United States at New York, to recognize the sovereignty of the people of Southern Cameroon. And if they voted, British government on the 30th of September took the document pertaining to the people of Southern Cameroon and handed to a foreign government. Remember that they voted not to recognize the people of Southern Cameroon as a distinctive sovereign nations at the United Nations. So the British government breach of trust on the 30th of September 1961 took the document that pertained to the people of Southern Cameroon and handed over to Ahidjo. So at what grounds did the British government undertook to hand such a document rather to the rightful owners of the Southern Cameroon? Because Article 1514 and Article 1608 did not authorize Britain to hand over the territory of Southern Cameroon document to a foreign nation, La Republique. It says the colonial territory, those territories that are under the colonial masters, be given their independence. And that is what it was voted. So the question now is, why did the British Crown choose to take a document that pertained to the people of Southern Cameroon and hand over to a foreign nation, La Republique du Cameroun, that they are aware Britain and the United States voted in 1961, on the 21st of April 1961, Britain and United States voted at the United Nations headquarters in respect of the Article 1540 XV and enforced by 1608. If La Republique voted against those two articles, voted against Article 1608 XV. Why and what grounds did the Great Britain choose to hand over that document? Rather to hand over the document because at the time there was an active government in Southern Cameroon. At the time there was an active government in Southern Cameroon. So therefore, Britain willfully breach of duty and violate the boundaries and loyalty between the people that existed between the people of Southern Cameroon and the British government, and disregard the sovereign government that at the time was existent. There was no fighting, there was no disgruntledness. It was a respected government. First, they violate fairness and the duty of obligations. So, why? So, with respect to if there was a government in Southern Cameroon, if there was a real government in Southern Cameroon that existed, there was no destruction, there was no infighting between the government, that prompted Britain to think that it was better to hand over to a different because of this disunity. There was no disunity in Southern Cameroon at the time. In fact, there was an effective and efficient government in Southern Cameroon more than La Republique du Cameroon. First, there was a balance of government. There was a parliament. There was a legislative house of assembly in Southern Cameroon because La Republique has what they call parliament. There was a legislative house of assembly in Southern Cameroon, and the prime minister, which is the head of government. In fact, it was highly respected. It was a democratic institution in Southern Cameroon. There was never a democratic institution in La Republique at this time. So Ahidjo, that actually represents La Republique, has no effective parliament. First, Ahidjo was never elected. Ahidjo was simply an appointed official by the interest of France because in reality, UPC should have been the legal party in La Republique. UPC should have been the legal party in La Republique. But however, France knew the goal of UPC and chose with complicity of Ahidjo and banned the UPC. And when they bound the UPC, France assisted La Republique to hunt down the leaders of the UPC. And when France began to hunt down the leaders of the UPC, is what amounted to what they call the guillotine of a certain members, officials of the UPC. So officials of the UPC that could have been a legitimate government of La Republique instead of Ahidjo. Ahidjo was an illegal government, but because of the loyalty to France, they were chosen as the right government instead of the UPC that could have been the rightful government of La Republique. And so because of that, members of the UPC were considered an outrage and began hunting and slaughtering many of the UPC. And that is where in Southern Cameroon case was efficient. There was a government elected by the people with parliament. So the plebiscite in which La Republique claimed, the plebiscite was not a binding document. The plebiscite was a recommendation or a suggestion. The plebiscite in which was held on the 10th of 19th, was every suggestion, wasn't a recommendation, and wasn't a non-binding. In fact, there was never a binding document between La Republique and the people of Southern Cameroon. So some people claim that the federation that existed between the people of Southern Cameroon and La Republique, there was never a federation between the people of Southern Cameroon and La Republique. There was never a federation. So when did the federation take place? It wasn't. What they claimed to be 1972 was ineffective. It wasn't ineffective. It was a non-binding. It was a non-binding. So what is our in 1961? So how can the world community solve the problem? Is to go back to the book and look at the reality where they went wrong. It is a fact. It is a fact. La Republique independence is 1st of January 1961, which should have been their day of independence that they should have been celebrating, in which they are not. They are not. So the people of Southern Cameroon declare, the people of Southern Cameroon in 2017 restore the overthrown government of Joa. Joa was the last prime minister. You have Endele, the first prime minister of Southern Cameroon. You have Django Foncha, the second prime minister of Southern Cameroon, that duly elected by the people. Then you have Joa, the third prime minister of Southern Cameroon, which was intentionally overthrown by Ahidjo, who was not even a legitimate president of La Republique. So it was overthrown with complicity of France and Estimona. So it was overthrown, Joa was overthrown with complicity of France and Estimona, because France was behind to ensure that the actual government of Southern Cameroon, because La Republique didn't have any effective government. As I said before, La Republique, Ahidjo wasn't a legitimate government of La Republique. It was the UPC, which was the popular party in La Republique. The UPC was the popular party that should have, if there was an election that was conducted, free and fair election that should have been conducted, as in the case of Southern Cameroon, where there was a fair and clean and fair election that was being held in Southern Cameroon. But in La Republique, there was never a free and fair elections. So because of that, France knew that if there was a free and fair election to be organized in La Republique, the leaders of the UPC would have emerged as the victorious. And that would have prevented France to forge ahead with their fraudulence. So therefore, they forced Ahidjo to ban the UPC, in which Ahidjo did. And so when the UPC was banned, members of the UPC were being hunted down and guillotined with France. And that led to so many people of the UPC and the Bassas, Bamilekes were being guillotined. So the people of Southern Cameroon has never had any binding relationship with La Republique. So therefore, Great Britain, and an area that was prior interest, was that Britain knew that if they are not rewarded La Republique du Cameroun with the Southern Cameroon, without disregard to the political landscape of Southern Cameroon. So Britain fraudulently, in order to prevent France's expansion in the east of Africa, while Britain prevent France from expansion into East Africa, so Britain can get monopoly in East Africa, So was to give Southern Cameroon, that is why the essential document that was voted in the United Nations in 1961 on the April 21st, 1961, the document that was voted was handed over to France with La Republique. So to prevent France expansion in the Middle East, so therefore that gives Britain a monopoly power over the east of Africa. So, however, Article 1608 SV that was voted, 64 nations here in the United States voted overwhelmingly to recognize the people of Southern Cameroon. So if they voted against 23 nations that voted against, 23 nations voted against, and including most of the French Africans, the French African or the colonial territory of France that is in Africa, most of them voted against that Article 1608. The essence was not to see an emerging nation, the Southern Cameroon. So, in 2017, the interim government simply restore. When they ask about restoration, people don't know why they call restoration. So that is why when they talk about restoration of the Southern Cameroon government, many people are wondering, what do they mean by restoration? And some people are confused about the word restoration. So this is what it means by restorations. So since the government, the active government of Southern Cameroon, was overthrown by Ahidjo, that's the Ngumjua government. That was an active government of Southern Cameroon. Since it was overthrown by Ahidjo, therefore the people of Southern Cameroon in 2017 restored that active government that was overthrown by La Republique du Cameroon. So that is why when they said restore is to restore the active government that was overthrown, I think it was in 1967 or 68. 1968. Yes, the Joas government was overthrown in 1968 by Ahidjo with complicity of Estimona. And so that is why the people of Southern Cameroon restored that government that existed in 1968. I'm sure that point is clear. So the British government, breach of this trust, has forced the people of Southern Cameroon to be losing lives that are being killed deliberately, as what is currently going on. So we are asking the United States to respect the vote, because the United States was part of all those nations that in 1961, on 21st of April 1961, United States and Britain and the rest of other nations and the rest of other 64 nations voted overwhelmingly to recognize the people of Southern Cameroon. So United States, in order to recognize this, they should stand and say, okay, I am a participant that voted in 1961 to recognize the people of Southern Cameroon. So if the people of Southern Cameroon is now questioning their legitimacy and the legality of La Republique, then the United States need to point its finger and say, yes, I am one of the nations. In order to not to stand, let's stand and face the reality. And that is why we are urging the United States to do the right thing. So I will continue this topic about Southern Cameroon sovereignty and the rightful ownership of the people of Southern Cameroon in a later date. I will dwell more detailedly on the issues of Article 1608 and Article 50 Article 1608 and Article 1514 about the sovereignty of the people of Southern Cameroon. I want to take a moment to thank all of you that are watching. It was a nice talking to you, and I will continue on education of the people of Southern Cameroon and the quest of sovereignty. I want to thank all of you. It was nice speaking to you. I wish you all a happy and a wonderful day. This is Fundon Daniel speaking live here from the great state of Texas, here in the United States. Have a wonderful day.